Hi everyone, Jennifer McKeever here. I'm a registered clinical counselor and trauma educator, and I'm really excited about what I'm going to be sharing with you in this video for this series on shame. Now, hopefully you watched the earlier video where I talk about what shame is and how it's different from guilt, because now I like to take us a layer deeper, and that means we're going to travel into our bodies. Because shame, it's not just a painful emotion or a toxic belief about ourselves. It is really a survival response that is wired into both our psyche and our biology, and we need to understand that to heal from it. We feel shame as a self-criticism or an urge to disappear or wanting to hide, but it actually starts in your nervous system. And I love teaching about the nervous system in my breathwork trainings and other courses because I feel like the more we can understand our bodies, the more empowered we are to actually shift what's happening inside and create new options for ourselves. So let's dive into this really interesting information. To understand chronic toxic shame, we have to go back to where it usually begins, which is for most of us, childhood. And as children, of course, we are completely dependent on our caregivers for survival. And we are brilliant. We learn very quickly what is acceptable and what is not okay. For instance, if expressing really big energy or emotions like crying or anger, even joy, leads to punishment, we quickly get the message, our system gets the message, that's not safe, that's not wanted, stop it. We get the message that what we are doing is not okay. It has to stop immediately if we're going to be safe. So shame steps in. Shame's function is to stop something from happening, and this is essential for understanding and healing shame. Shame acts like an emotional brake that just shuts down whatever our caretakers signaled is not okay. If it's not okay, it could threaten our connection. So shame comes in to stop it. Not because we choose it. It's actually more of a built-in survival reflex. Like how you flinch when something startles you, you have that little jump. Shame is an autonomic response. We don't get to choose it. And so to understand how this works, we need to go into the nervous system, because this automatic response is governed by your autonomic nervous system. That's the part of your system that runs beneath our conscious awareness. The system manages everything in our bodies, our heartbeat, our breath, our digestion, our emotional arousal, our hormones. Its primary job is to keep you safe and alive. And it does that through two main branches, which you've probably heard of. One, the sympathetic nervous system. That's what mobilizes us for energy, gives us that fight or flight energy. And the other is the parasympathetic, which you've probably heard about as being about resting and digesting. It's also about emotional regulation. And this parasympathetic branch has two distinct pathways that are really important. One, the ventral pathway. This is above our diaphragm. It supports feelings of being safe, being calm, being able to engage with other people. And then the second branch is called the dorsal branch, and that's responsible for things like freeze, despair, collapse, immobilization. It's all in our biology. And if you want more details on the nervous system, trauma healing, the vagus nerve, please be sure to visit my website. You can sign up there for the free resources I have that cover all of this. There's hours of valuable information there. We don't have time to go into it here, but you have it all there. Now, let's get back to the vagus nerve. When your system senses overwhelm, and when fight or flight is not possible, you cannot escape, and there's overwhelm, and things need to stop now, that's where the dorsal vagal complex comes in. It shuts everything down. We go numb, we withdraw, we disappear inwards. And this is not something we get to consciously choose. It happens automatically, it happens instinctually. Our system says this is the best option we have to survive. And that's where shame lives, in that parasympathetic freeze state. Shame often feels like a full body shutdown, like we want to disappear, we want to hide, because it is. What's so key here is that your nervous system doesn't just respond to physical threats. Our sympathetic nervous system, our vagus nerve, our parasympathetic system, it's not just keeping us safe from lions chasing us out there. It also responds to relational danger, like being abandoned, being ridiculed, being shamed, being rejected. So when your body senses that approval, love, belonging is at risk, it reacts as if survival is on the line, because as children it was. We could not be doing things that cause us to get into trouble over and over and over and not connect to our caretakers. Now, I think it's important to say here that shame is not the enemy. In small doses, in the right context, it's actually protective. It helps us learn how to be part of society, how to behave, how to connect and treat people. But here's the catch. It only works if it's met with repair. So let me give you an example of what that looks like. Let's imagine a child is really excited, they're really playful, they have lots of energy, and they're really excited and they're reaching for a shiny glass on a high shelf. And the excitement is there, the curiosity is there, there's sympathetic energy, there's also ventral energy, they're curious, they're exploring. They're reaching for this glass, and the parent sharply says, no, that's not for you. And the child startles, they shrink, there's that moment of shame, they often cry. That's the dorsal branch coming in and stopping it, stopping the excitement, the curiosity, the activity, stopping that sympathetic charge. But then if the parent kneels down and says, hey, I didn't mean to scare you. I know you're just curious about that vase, that glass up there. Let's find something new to play with together. It's okay, honey. That's repair. That moment of repair helps the child's nervous system settle down and come back into connection. The influence of the dorsal branch lifts, and it can bring back that ventral connection and safety again. Because you see, the child was playing. There's sympathetic energy in that. And then shame came and shut that down. It stopped it from happening. And so going up and then down, but then back into repair. When there's that repair, that tells a child's system that we are safe, we are wanted, that we are allowed, and this actually builds nervous system resilience. But now let's look like when there's not repair. Same story. This child is super curious, they're excited, they're reaching for something, and the parent just yells, no, what's wrong with you? Feel that. Ugh. And now there's no repair. There's just this feeling of criticism, that you've done something wrong. The child is collapsed in tears. And instead of helping them understand how their actions were wrong, they internalize the message, I am wrong. And when shame happens frequently and it isn't repaired, the nervous system learns to use shame over and over to suppress anything that might cause danger. Feelings, needs, impulses, even joy. It becomes like a well-worn path or groove that our nervous system has learned to default to for safety. This is what turns shame from a momentary experience into a survival strategy. And this is why, as adults, so many of us have this heavy cloak of shame. It interferes in our relationships, makes us not trust ourselves. It says, no, don't take risks. It restricts really important feelings like healthy anger, sadness, joy, aliveness. And this is because the nervous system state that we are in is directly related to the emotions we can feel. So remember earlier when I spoke about the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of our nervous system? Well, the sympathetic branch, the energy in that system, it's a big part of what gives us the emotional charge that we need to feel things like healthy anger. Now, you can't access certain emotions, and especially healthy anger, when we're in a shame state. Anger comes from mobilization. Energy is able to come up, that fight or flight response. But shame lives in the dorsal, vagal, freeze, collapse part of our nervous system. And a frozen body can't fight. And that can be 100% protective in dangerous situations. So if you've ever thought as an adult, I should be angry, but instead you feel frozen or numb and shamed, that's not a mindset issue. It's your nervous system actually doing what it knows to do based on the past, based on what's survived and worked in the past. And my experience at working with thousands of people worldwide is that emotions like anger or grief, they show up later after the shame freeze begins to thaw and they feel safe and supported by others. They can then start to feel everything that is living underneath the shame when they're held safely by other people. So I really believe that understanding shame through a nervous system lens is powerful. Knowing that this is an automatic response of our body, it helps us shift the question from more that shame-based thought, what's wrong with me, to looking at it from a survival perspective and saying, okay, what in me did I need to shut down in order to stay safe? I feel that it's very different. That opens a door of compassion for ourselves. And it opens also the door for healing because we can learn to work with this system that has been trying to protect us all along. So in the next video, we're going to explore something that's really fascinating called procedural memory and how shame patterns become automatic, and unconscious, and how we can begin to retrain our nervous system towards connection rather than collapse and burying ourselves in shame. So if this resonated for you, please leave a message below what landed for you. What do you notice in your own system? What would you like to hear more about? Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you again in the next video soon. Bye for now.